I do like a man with a little bit of creative thinking, and this morning, just the person for you. His name is Dr. Peter Boghossian. He's a full-time faculty member at Portland State University in the philosophy department. Now, I know you're thinking, philosophy, are you going to give me a little bit of Aristotle? Are you going to give me a little bit of Euripides? No, I'm going to give you a little bit of current day thinking. It's a Boghossian, and perhaps it will be an explosion with a B. Good morning to you, Dr. Peter Boghossian.
Good morning. That was a great intro.
I'm so glad that you enjoyed it because, you know, for a man who's written himself a book called A Manual for Creating Atheists, obviously you're quite fond of throwing stones into a pond.
Stones into a pond, that would be a very nice euphemism for a stick in a hornet's nest. Yeah, that's pretty much right.
So what has brought this upon? What have you been doing with this theory, this manual for creating atheists?
Well, it's interesting. It's a book, it's an instruction booklet that teaches people how to be more thoughtful and more reflective on their God beliefs so they can break through delusion and superstition. And so after I wrote it, many people have been going on YouTube and following the template in the book for how to have conversations with believers to help them be more reflective about their faith and ultimately to abandon their faith.
So it's kind of like the reverse of a Jehovah's Witness knocking at your door.
In one sense it is, but in another sense it prides itself on belief revision, and it's a type of anti-proselytizing. Unlike Jehovah's Witnesses or Mormons or what have you, although I did look at that corpus of literature and reverse engineer it and use some of those techniques, but it teaches people how to help people break through dogmatism by talking to them.
Why do you think that's such an important thing to do in this modern world?
Oh, I think it's indispensable because we're interconnected now. And we live in a world in which in democracies people vote, and they vote on things that can be potentially hurtful or very harmful to other people. And we've seen that here in the United States with prohibitions on gay marriage or death with dignity, and we continue to see that around the world. We've also seen that with the rise of Islamism, which is what my presentation on this Saturday is going to be about.
I find that your presentation on Islamism is particularly fascinating, given that you've done an extraordinary amount of work with people in jails, trying to work out what puts people on the road to holding really strong jihadist views.
Yeah, that's right. Prison inmates, drug addicts, people of different faith traditions. The operative principle is doubt. And the idea, so here's the hypothesis. The stronger the doubt, the less likely it is that one will act upon a belief. So how do we use doubt as a vehicle to help separate belief from action?
Why is working with people in prisons so crucial to what you're doing?
Well, a lot of reasons. One, many people, the interventions I've designed are designed for people who don't think that they have a problem or they don't want to change. And so I work with prison inmates and I help them to desist from crime. So the new way we think about this is not recidivism rates, which is how many people get out and come back, but it's if they actually desist and cease criminal behavior. So prison inmates are particularly recalcitrant or stubborn. They're a type of population that I think it's important to work with so that you can really see some of those techniques work their way.
But my understanding is that many people who have gone the wrong way of the law sometimes find God, and that's their salvation. So that's a really interesting kind of counterintuitive way of looking at it.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting when many people, whether it's a drug or alcohol program or a new religion, first start it, they tend to become more fundamentalist in their beliefs. If you look at I can't speak to Australia, and I apologize for that. I don't know the statistics about prisons there, but very, very few prisoners are atheists. And I don't think we need to give people a delusion in order for them to live a better life. I don't think we need to give people fear of hell. And in fact, if you look at the data, people don't need to pray about getting jobs they actually need jobs. Those are the golden metrics of recidivism, jobs, and housing. And they need to be taught actionable skills so that they can find a house and they can get a job and hold a job. And the way to do that is not through prayer. It's not through superstition, and it's not through delusion.
So in terms of creating a manual to create atheists, is this a dangerous pastime of yours? As if one wants to actually pick up your little pamphlet and go around anti-converting, is it a dangerous thing to do, or is it something that you can do softly and actually get results?
You mean dangerous in terms of risk to your safety?
Yeah.
I don't think so. So here's the way to think about it. All beliefs have built-in defense mechanisms. So whether you can take this out of the realm of religion, whether it's in capital political issues. I've been listening to a lot of Australian news lately, whether it's political issues, social issues, environmental issues. So engaging someone about those beliefs invokes a defensive posture. And so the way to not invoke a defensive posture and help people value belief revision is to target how they know what they know. So target their path to knowledge and not the conclusion they come to. We haven't evolved defensive structures or mechanisms. It's called epistemology, how one knows what they know. We haven't evolved defensive mechanisms for that. So that's the way to help facilitate belief change in people.
So I would imagine this could possibly be a very useful tool when dealing with young people. We have an issue here with young people who are getting really attracted to being jihadi brides and going off to fight in Syria.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an enormous problem. Yeah, that's what my talk is called Islamism in Doubt. And I propose two strategies, a micro strategy, which is a personal one-on-one engagement to de-radicalize jihadis. And the second strategy is a macro strategy, and I use techniques by the tobacco industries and by various industries funding climate change. I use those mechanisms in the same arena to help instill doubt in jihadis.
Are you saying it's the same techniques to stop smoking that you could use to de-radicalize someone?
Yeah, they're identical.
Like what?
One of the main reasons that young men stopped smoking, there were successful advertising campaigns linked to smoking and impotence. So it wasn't pictures of graphic lungs or people coughing. It was becoming impotent.
So it's all about being a man.
It's all about how to break those ties. Islam is very good. It has a very seductive romantic message. And we need to change that message on a macro level. We need two things. We need techniques that people can use on a micro level to instill doubt in would-be jihadists and in people who have come back from Iraq and Syria. And the good news about that is that the data is 9 out of 10 of those people want to peacefully reintegrate. And so to go back to what we were talking about before, we need those golden metrics.
So our government's talking about actually stripping these people from citizenship, yet you're saying it's important to have them come back and reintegrate.
I'm saying that it's an extraordinarily complicated problem and there's no simple solution. So here's what I'm saying unequivocally. If they come back, you absolutely, unequivocally, positively have to have mechanisms in place so that they can reintegrate in society. If you do not have those mechanisms, you will have a catastrophe on your hands, period. Now, you can look at Aarhus, Denmark, for example, is doing some fascinating work with that. So you don't need to reinvent the wheel. People are already working and have had success with programs. And they've drawn from this thing called DDR. It's a corpus of literature about disarmament, demobilization, de-radicalization, and how to reach people who have come back from conflict zones and war zones and what we need to successfully reintegrate them. And so it's not just binary. We strip them of their citizenship or we don't. If you do not strip them of their citizenship, you have to have the mechanism in place to facilitate their reintegration into society, into civil society.
I think your talks sound fascinating. I know why your surname rhymes with explosion, because you are. You are a mental explosion, Dr. Peter Boghossian, aren't you? You're a troublemaker.
I ran in the 7th grade. I ran for vice president of my class on Vote for Boghossian and There'll Be an Explosion. You couldn't do that anymore.
No, you couldn't.
No.
They'd strip search you and they'd lock you up and you'd be put out away from everybody until you were determined safe.
That's right.
Dr. Peter Boghossian is the author of A Manual for Creating Atheists. I hope you've enjoyed meeting him this morning. He'll present How Do You Know as part of an Australian lecture tour sponsored by the Australian Rationalist Society, Friday the 19th of June at the State Library of Victoria in Melbourne, and Wednesday the 17th of June, that's 2 days earlier, at the Albion Hotel in Kyneton. If you want to know more, just go to the website, which is www.rationalist.com.au. The How Do You Know Tour. And how do you do, Dr. Peter Boghossian?
My absolute pleasure. I can't wait to see you at my talk.